$20,000 for the AC, which you're looking to
A little bit more than
year-end
that.
savings.
Yeah, 23, 24, I think.
Okay. $15,000 for an ATV, again, year-end savings. So it's basically roughly about $100,000, looks a little light of $100,000, that is going to come from a combination of detail, drug forfeiture, and year-end savings.
Correct.
And you're probably going to go after the year-end savings first if you find you have it as you get to the latter part of the year, and then make up for it in the other two?
Correct.
Okay.
I may execute the vehicle one sooner if that's available with just those exclusive funds and work the other two through.
And then the final question, Ben had made a comment which I didn't completely follow, but it sounded like pulling one of the cruisers for 2013 into 2012.
And adjusting the budget, but that was down to the work that was authorized last week with Fred and Mike as far as what they can find in the operating budget.
So we think
we're
we're also
then, I think we had talked. I had asked Fred last week to look at the vehicle that was coming into building inspection, and to say whether that could be potentially funded out of projected.
I understand, but I'm purely looking at.
I'm saying one of those other vehicles out of the police department's budget if it could come into 12, would be a reduction in the operating budget for 13.
Right, but you're saying that in addition to this $99,000 that I just summarized, we're saying that there's a possibility of also funding the whatever it is, 30-odd thousand for a 2013 cruiser?
I mean, I can look at that.
That's the last priority of all these things?
Well, no, I mean, I understand that's what the board's interested in doing. I'll do what I can to make that happen.
But I assume that would priority-wise fall behind the two Tahoes, the AC and the ATV. Okay. And the use of the two Tahoes, one was Dan Gillies.
One's going to go to
replacement.
That's replacing that vehicle, but in all likelihood, that'll probably end up being some sort of a command-type vehicle.
Okay.
We'll set that up to be, maybe the sergeants will take that. We'll have to decide operationally. The other is, and this is the key part, part of this, we're increasing our fleet by one other vehicle currently, so it would take what is currently my unmarked, push that down, and move a car over to an SRO.
Okay.
That's what we look to do.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Bean.
I have no questions, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Pierce?
This is a question from Mike. In your monthly report tonight, I think you were saying our projection right now is we're not going to be exactly on the heavy side with this year-end savings account, so to speak. A little bit on the short side.
Right now, you're right. The numbers have turned around in that it's now a positive savings. As I reported in the report that I will talk to you about next month. But every month you get closer to the end, you'll have a better number. I have to believe it will get larger. But if we're talking about, possibly taking out the building inspector truck, that's one issue that, we might be able to cover. And then Jamie will be looking at dealing with his end of the year numbers, basically out of his budget. I look at the whole thing in toto. So we'll have to move along, but we'll get there.
I was just looking at this. We did your best estimate, which I appreciate. Looks like it's a little tighter than what we thought it was earlier on this report.
It's better than it was. It went. We are now in a savings position. Last month we were overspent.
Okay.
So we're better, and it should get larger, but it will not. I do not believe it will get anywhere near the size it has in the last couple of years.
You're talking about the end of August or the end of September when you're talking about where your projections are?
That's the end of
August.
That's right, and that's the August statements that I'm talking about.
Okay, because I thought you were indicating in here that we were a little tight.
I will say based on my projections of where I think we will end up at the end of the year, the things that we've discussed here, I think we're fine on, and the added issue that the board wants to do, we'll be in the ballpark. I could be in the ballpark is my estimate of where I think we're going to be, barring something else occurring between now and the end of the year.
I just was, getting a little concerned when we get down pretty close to the numbers there. It makes you a little nervous, and as long as we think we can handle it, I'm all happy with it. We got to keep a close eye on it when we're that close. That's all.
And I wasn't making any motion to adjust the budget that the police department's proposed at this point. I would make a motion then to authorize the chief to seek bids, I think is what you're asking for at this time.
Well, I think the appropriate direction would be first authorize us to proceed, and then we will follow the purchasing policy that's appropriate, whether that's being a state bid process or we have to go to bid based on number.
I'll authorize you to proceed and to follow established bidding processes for the 2 vehicles, the HVAC repairs, and the ATV.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
Don't go away. Don't go away. You got one other budget in case there's any questions. I don't
We do
want
this
to come
every
up
year,
later.
don't we?
It's the repeat. The woof
Animal control.
Animal
We've
control.
been through that.
Just in case there's a question.
You happy to answer any questions?
Any questions about the animal control budget?
And you
Mike,
go
what page is that on?
125.
I guess we better
You're
look
right
at
on
it, I
that,
guess.
huh?
Keep everything on the up and up.
Missed it
We do
one
this every
year.
year, we do,
We
I
missed
know.
it one year, and I
Mike
remember we had to
unfortunately
come
always
back later,
chases
so.
me and says, yeah, one more page. The only thing in there that obviously the wage issues, there was some, we are repairing his vehicle at a faster rate, and we are going to need to address that at some point.
Okay, thank you.
I know Fred was advocating we look at that. We have. We didn't put it in right now, but hopefully that one doesn't bite us in the tail.
What is the year of that vehicle?
Off the top of my head, and on my list, I'm going to say it's a 6, 5 or 6, I think, somewhere in there.
But it doesn't get it doesn't get private detail usage, does it?
No, the issue for us isn't mileage, is vehicles age for us, it's the rot, because we are
Because
driving
of-
through salt water, we're doing all that, and we have some issues with that underwash, with really taking steps to wash them better, but that's our issue.
The last 2 vehicles we've done have been due to rotted frames that were old, that had been in that saltwater environment for an extended period. There was an 02 Crown Vic and now the 03 Expedition.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
04, possibly.
Mr. Pierce?
Do you think a wash-down facility would help that issue a little bit?
If it's an underwash, it can't hurt, yeah. I mean, we wash them, I think, fairly well. We don't have body rot from the outside in, it's really up underneath, and all I can think of is, we went back and looked when we started seeing more of this to try and figure out why, and I think it's the underwash. We were going through a commercial wash facility, and we weren't paying for the underwash. We are now, and well, hopefully that'll pay some benefits, but if we have the town wash-down facility, we talked about this, that we could be driving through at least that undercarriage wash fairly frequently.
I stopped taking mine to the car wash because I didn't like the fact they're washing me with everybody else's salt, but that's an opinion on that. So you think...
See your car, you haven't been going through a car wash very often with the thing.
You're right, it's pretty dirty. I agree with that, Chief. Anyway, back to the car wash. You think that'd be something we ought to consider at some point in time then, really?
It can't hurt.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Chief, before you take off, could you touch on that annual walk by the sea issue?
Right, I beg your pardon. Ms. Nichols approached me on this, and I would ask, you have it on your consent agenda. We have, if you recall, the large Smutty Nose marathon, half marathon, the same day and a conflict time. I'd ask you to pull that from this week. Allow me to look a little closer. My recollection, Mr. Nichols asked me a question, is that it was looked at and felt it was all right. I want to look and be confident that I answered before you approve it. What it is that this event is trying to run simultaneous to the marathon event, which is a huge event. So we want to make sure there's no conflicts between those two, so I'd ask you to pull that as well.
Any questions on the animal control?
No, sir.
Further? No. Thank you very much.
Just one other, I think the board had, on a previous meeting, some questions about mounted patrol schedule. Everybody else set with that? Any issues with that?
Mine's some taxpayers asking about they hadn't seen them in it.
Yeah, they were out.
Mind just enlighten us on
Yeah,
that?
they were out. Basically, it's based on the availability of the rider and the condition of the horse at the time. Now, we had a great summer, so we had a lot of good weather. As you recall, we had to swap out one of the horses. Arrow left, and we brought in Bolt. So he was kind of new to the environment. So we try to ease into that, not put the horse out in an area where he could cause potential issues with a crowded situation. I spoke to Deputy Chief Pelletier, retired today. He's our consultant and make good assessments. The horses have progressed very well. We did bring them out on a couple of fireworks occasions. Both of the horses were rock steady. The fireworks didn't bother them. Did very well dealing down in the beach environment. A lot of times the last horse we had to get rid of was just because the horse could not acclimate to the ocean. The fact that, it's not something they see when we get them up from Kentucky, so that's the first thing we do. We bring them down to the sand, and sometimes that's a fun ride. If you've never done that before with a new horse going down to the beach the first time, it can be a little nerve-wracking. great horse, he just could not acclimate to that. That's not acceptable. We have a great working relationship with our barn down in Kentucky.